Pardon.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of WP Roundtable. My name is Jason Crawford, coming to you from Medellin, Colombia, and we're ready to get started.
Hey, Jason, you sure look good tonight, I just gotta say. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for episode 88. We have a pretty cool show. My name is Kyle, and I'm happy to be here and talk about WordPress stuff and our awesome guest. So today's show is pretty special, I'm not gonna lie. It is kind of a exciting episode for me because we've interviewed a lot of people. I mean, I've interviewed more people in the WordPress community than most people have. I'm just gonna say we've been doing this a little while, and this episode's pretty special to me because we've had some pretty cool people on the show, but not too many quite as cool as this guy here, Mr. Peter Shackelford, is with us today. So this is very, very exciting. Peter, you want to say hi real quick?
Hey, everybody.
All right. So if you're one of those, kind of oblivious people who don't know who Peter Shackelford is yet, he's the guy who just organizes the local Jackson WordPress meetup. He works at a company called Ithaca on a site called JSTOR. He's been doing WordPress development for quite a few years now. And he's basically the reason I got into all this goofy stuff. So he's a big inspiration for me, someone who pushed me in all the right directions and taught me all the right things, got me on my path to being kind of a wherever it is that I am today. So I owe a lot to Peter and his brother Daniel as well for being good friends and great teachers and mentors. So, Peter, I'm grateful to have you on the show tonight.
Cool, thanks. What an introduction.
And cheers. Tonight I'm drinking a home-brewed hard cider from Peter himself.
Enjoy. And I'm having a little rooibos tea from South Africa.
Oh, delicious. All right. So, before we dive into learning more about Mr. Shackelford, we're going to share our quick picks of the week real quick here. I've got one that I just wanted to share real quick. It's not super recent, but from a couple weeks ago. Pippin shared his year-end review, and I always like these. There's this time of year, we get a lot of year-end review posts, and you could just spend days just reading everybody's year-end review posts. It's a popular thing to do. I didn't actually write one this year, but Pippin wrote a really great one, and he does every year, and I really enjoy it. And I think his company is doing cool things, and he's growing a lot, and he shares some interesting lessons that he's taken away from his journey. So I put a link somewhere, and I think it's a good post.
All right, well, I'll jump in. I've actually got two. I'm taking advantage of Mark's absence here, and I'm going to take up his pick of the week space. My first one is that crazy loon James Dahlman is got the for-profit side of, wait, what do we call that again? Happy Joe launched, and he's looking for contractors who want to participate in the Happy Joe work site. So they're looking for developers, designers, I would assume SEO and content creation as well, but specifically I know developers and designers right now. And I've already shared the link, but if you are interested in applying for a position, it's happyjoe.com/join-the-team. My second one is, so Jamie from the Headway theme that I use, she's like the queen of Headway. Her niece is trying to fund a trip to a medical forum in hopes of one day being a doctor, and so it's a GoFundMe type deal. It's GoFundMe.com. NYFL trip, if anybody's interested in helping fund a young girl's ambitions of being a doctor.
Cool. And I threw Idlewords Talks website, the website OBC talk. It was a great talk. I'm trying to remember what the event was. I'm going to go click on the link real quick to remind myself of what event it was at. It was in Australia. The web directions from 2015 in October, but it's a great presentation on why the internet is slow, but it's also not in a mean way, but points at his finger at some of the groups that try to tell you your website's actually faster, but when it comes down to it, resources loaded and how big they are is the biggest thing that can make your website obese. So if you're not counting those things, then what you're counting doesn't count as much. So he does a really great way. He just does a really good presentation on getting back to the basics, keeping things simple, and trying to reduce page size and weight. And I thoroughly enjoyed the presentation, the video, as well as the slides that he put on his site that actually practices what he preaches. His site's really small and fast.
This looks really cool, Peter. Thanks for sharing. I'm interested in checking it out, so I'm going to bookmark this. All right. So now let's learn more about Peter. We've got a lot of questions for you tonight. We're going to try and get through them, and the world can know more about Mr. Pixel Plow himself. So let's start at the beginning, Peter. Let's go way back. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, there's two things I distinctly remember. One of them was that I wanted to be a blacksmith, because nothing's as cool as like pumping bellows and making red hot coals and then pounding metal into submission and creating really cool things that once you're done with them, they're as hard as anything and they last. And I grew up reading books that had things to do with blacksmiths and quenching it in the oil to make it so that it was tempered, and like how to make things brittle and how to make them extra hard and malleable and all that fun stuff. Once I even went down and wrote down all of the melting points of all the metals. I had a chart, and I was like, oh. And I tried to figure out what things I could actually melt, which was pretty cool. The other thing I wish that when I was little I used to wish was that I had been born Amish, because they seem to work really hard and they play hard and they do good, honest work. I mean, you can't go wrong with doing good, honest work. You get more honest than taking care of your animals and plowing the fields and looking after your neighbor.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Well, you're the first to say anything like that on the show, and it's pretty special. I like that. And it's funny when you look at the things that you're doing now and the lifestyle that you live, and you just have very similar passions. Hasn't changed much.
Nope.
So as you got started with your career, what sort of things were you doing kind of before you got into a profession on the web?
My first real job revolved around doing videography. I had an opportunity. I joined a ministry shortly after high school for 2 years, and I traveled around the world on a ministry ship. And I got to be one of their videographers. So I got to document the ministry and create videos and edit them. And then I continued to do a few different I did a number of big video projects after that over the next couple of years. So that was my first real career, per se. And then it transitioned into doing web development, which is, well, I can explain why that was particularly nice.
Great. So how did the transition go as you started to develop websites and work with WordPress professionally?
Well, initially it started out, my wife and I founded a nonprofit for this video project stuff, and my brother suggested, hey, how about you make a website using WordPress? And I was like, okay. So I started playing around with WordPress, and I started doing some very minimal theme customization, and identifying, oh, I want this to be green instead of yellow. So I figured out what it took to do that. And so I just started taking things apart and putting them back together until I had a little website for a nonprofit. And then after returning to the U.S., I was without work for a while because I didn't have a lot of connections in the area. So then I did some consulting work for a year for one company where I'd just clock my hours and do stuff. And then after that, I felt like I'd learned enough to actually know how to do what other people wanted. That project never actually launched. I've gone back even in the past couple of years, and there's still nothing there, and that was 9 or so years ago. But I learned a lot of ways how not to do things, because You don't copy and paste the content and went from one post into another and then replace the content. You just create a template. And that's one of those things I suggested. Like, there's got to be a better way. And I got to learn lots of things where I kept asking myself, there's got to be a better way. And then sure enough, there was.
All right. So eventually you started doing stuff full-time, working with WordPress every single day.
Yes.
When did you get started doing that?
I got started doing that. I got hired by a Protestant denomination to rebuild their whole website and use WordPress as their platform. So we built a multi-site platform. That was, let's see, I want to think back, 5 or 6 years ago at least. So multi-site, it was before MU had merged with Core. So the first site that I built was using MU multi-user. And then I found articles by Curtis Gumai, I can't even say his last name, Curtis G, who works in higher ed, I think Maryland University or something. I found articles by him, the Rennicks, Andrea Rennick and Ron Rennick, and I was reading up everything I could. I'm like, okay, I got to build this thing. So they were godsends. Andrea answering things on the forums, writing articles, and Curtis and stuff. So I was able to build a really huge platform. All of the sites ran off of the same theme. So there's one theme, but there's feature sets, and I created functionality plugins that were enabled or disabled, or sections of the site that were enabled and disabled just by having a plugin on or off, but the plugin didn't actually do anything. The theme itself sensed whether this plugin was on, so I could enable these features that were built into the theme. It was a little crazy back then. I've learned a heck of a lot since then, but that was a big job, and I was able to build a bunch of really cool things, and I did that for a few years before moving on to my next job.
What was your next job?
My next job was another full-time job working with WordPress for a university, and the day I was hired was the day that the website was supposed to have been launched, but they hadn't accounted for the fact that they didn't have someone to work on it yet. So I worked there for 2 years and built their website using WordPress, and also got to build some really great things. I learned my lessons in terms of using multi-site. There are really great use cases for it, but you don't want to just do everything in multi-site just because you can. There's great people in the community that say exactly the same thing, and I respect that. So I built a big university site that had a bunch of fun functionality and related posts and all that kind of fun stuff.
So what are you doing there?
Right now I work for Ithaca, which is the parent company of JSTOR. JSTOR is an academic journal storage company that a lot of universities and libraries and museums subscribe to getting access. It's like Netflix for academic journals. You subscribe to it and you get access to these huge libraries. And I'm working in the business systems team where we develop solutions for the company on the whole. And we work with both Drupal and WordPress, and we maintain their marketing websites. But I'm not on the marketing team, but I help manage their websites. This is the first job that I didn't try to have to. I wasn't there to do everything. I wasn't shooting and editing video. I wasn't doing content strategy. I wasn't managing all the content. This one, I'm a web developer. I get to focus on functionality, and that's amazing.
So walk us through a typical day.
A typical day. I live in Jackson, Michigan, and I work in Ann Arbor, so I have a 45-minute commute. Ithaca is great, but at the same time, their remote culture isn't quite up there yet. But regardless, they're a great company to work with. We have a daily stand-up that happens at 9:30, and I work using Jira to keep track of all my tickets that I have, and we have big storyboarding projects where we lay out all the features we're going to be building, and then we put them in the queue and we work through them. And when things are ready, then QA checks through them to make sure everything happens as expected. And that's pretty much my day. I think, yeah, I like it. It's a good place to work. On Fridays, I work from home, and we have special project time, which is pretty sweet. Sometimes special projects revolve around doing documentation, so that we own a specific area of the technology. And other times, special project could be building a special plugin, or it can be learning, like studying up on something to make sure that there's more cross-training or more people who are authority on a specific area, or up-and-coming technologies that we need to learn because they could be handy in the future. If we can get buy-in for that from our boss, he'll let us study. Like when I work on starting to learn React and stuff like that. So my boss, I have to get some of the core things, crossover sorted out with my coworker Ben before we can move on to learning some of the more interesting current technologies. But that possibility is out there, which is really exciting.
Awesome. So I'm wondering if you could walk us through what it is you were looking to do. And we're getting kind of an echo, so I don't know if it's on your side or something. Yeah, usually if you can't hear it, then it's you. If you have headphones or something like that, it might be.
If you can wait for me to go grab headphones, I can go grab some.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Hold on.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that, Jason. All right. So, brief intermission. I think I've got a lot of questions left to ask. Been working on anything interesting this past week, Jason?
Trying to get some sleep.
Trying to get some sleep. How's the little one doing?
He's doing good.
Yeah?
He's not sleeping very much, though.
Not sleeping very much? Oh, okay. Yeah,
No.
For anybody watching, Jason just had his first child a couple weeks back.
Well, a month now.
A month? Wow.
A month in 2 days now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting stuff.
So what was the question last?
The question? Thanks, Peter.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could walk us through a little bit. You've been doing this for a little while. You've been making websites for a while, managing websites for a few different companies, and you wanted to do something a little different, a little something more, focus in different areas. Tell us a little bit about what you were trying to do professionally that kind of prompted the move to JSTOR and why you decided that this is the right fit.
The past few jobs, I was a lone developer, which means that there isn't any quality control. I'm not as motivated to make sure that everything is top notch because nobody else is ever going to look at my code unless somebody takes the job after me, which is a good enough motivation. But when there's a lot of pressure just to deliver, or I found in the past few jobs that I had that even though I specifically was hired to do web development, I was ending up having to actually manage the content on the sites, like make the changes because nobody else wanted to learn, and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot more responsibility, and I had to own the content. And I also ended up finding that I was being called in to edit videos, and editing videos is really time-consuming. Going and interviewing people, trying to find the best clips, assembling it, so that just cuts out a whole bunch more time of focus time on doing web development. So the idea of working for a company where I could actually focus on and improve in the area that I'm working on was a great opportunity for me. And the fact that I get to work with another developer, and we do code reviews, and we make sure that everything goes through everything goes through code review and QA. So it's just inspiring because it's like, hey, I'm not the only person. We have UX that designs things, We have a graphic designer. We have UX that designs interaction. We have a graphic designer that designs the look, and then we have people who are in charge of content, and then there's me, which means I can really just focus on the work, which is amazing. I mean, I couldn't be happier working on an interdisciplinary team.
Cool, cool, cool. So that's pretty exciting that you've been able to expose yourself to a lot of different things and narrow your focus and decide, really pinpoint the things that interest you and the type of working environment that you want to be in, and really found exactly that, so that now you're just getting better and better at the thing that you're passionate about. So that's pretty cool. What are some of those? What are some of the specific parts of the job, aspects of what you do that you really, really appreciate? Things like, oh, I'm just grateful that I get to do this every day, or these things I didn't get to do in other jobs before, or I'm really leveling up my skills in these areas. I appreciate this and this and this.
Yeah, all the things I've just said pretty much cover that. Being able to work on a multidisciplinary team. I have a great boss who encourages us to learn, as well as take ownership. And I've been called out a few times on not being forthright when it comes to communicating. I'm sure you could call that out for me, Kyle. So those are areas that I'm aware that I need to learn, and it's not like one of these things where it's like, oh, at your year-end review, this is the first time you heard that there has been a problem. I have one-on-ones with my boss every week, which is really valuable. Like getting feedback, critical feedback on how I'm doing, what areas I need to improve on. He helps set some of my goals and those kind of things. So all these things are just really, it's the kind of structure I need to just be able to focus on the work and not be in too much stress to be able, like, I don't want work to be too chaotic. So it's a good match, I'd say.
Sure.
I like some chaos, but at the same time, I like not having to think about it when I go to bed. Not every night, at least.
So we'll segue kind of into another topic a little bit. Ever since day one, you've been the guy who helped me really appreciate why WordPress is so special. Where the
community.
Yeah, community. I mean, it was lost on me before, and I thought it was the best tool of the few options I had available, but just never saw for how awesome it really was. And so, can you explain a little bit, kind of in your own words, what it is that makes you just passionate about this? It's just software, but we're passionate about it.
I think it's still, like I said a second ago, it's the community. I think that WordPress's low barrier to entry makes a huge difference in the community, where it's not like, just check it out in the doc, guys. Read the source. That's not your answer that you get on all the forums. It's, hey, this is what you do. And a lot of, it sometimes irks the more experienced developers that most of the tutorials out there are like, oh yeah, just throw this in your functions.php file. But the fact that any user could pick up something and throw it in their functions.php folder and make something crazy happen on their site is empowering. I don't want to be involved in a community that isn't empowering. I want to be involved in something that's there's so much, you could do this. There's so much potential. You just need to get your hands dirty a little bit, and everything is trial and error. You divide and conquer, and trying stuff out, not being afraid of things breaking, and pushing through and starting to get deeper and deeper into it. And I found that's the case when it comes to the community, is everybody is generally pretty encouraging, and people give away information for free all the time, left and right. There's plugins that are on GitHub that are actually for sale, but they trust that the people that know how to get stuff off of GitHub aren't going to make them go broke. You just go and get it and try it out, and you're like, you know what? This is so awesome. I think I'm ready to pay for this. And I've done that a few times where I'm like, I'm gonna try this plugin out. They say, hey, this is on the repo, test it out. But if you find it useful, then buy it. And I go do that, and I'm like, you know what? I want to support the community. I want to buy these plugins. I'm willing to put money where my mouth is, and they're obviously committed to quality because they're willing to put it out there and let people try it before they buy it. I mean, it's not one of these things where it's like, here's our website. We're not going to tell you the price. Please enter your information, submit it, and then we will send you junk mail for the rest of your life. I don't like that.
I don't like that either. Speaking of what you don't like, you're passionate about WordPress, the world of WordPress. I'm passionate about it too. I love it. And we talk about it all the time. Are there any things about WordPress? Could be the software, could be the ecosystem, just anything in general, that you're just not a big fan of. You wish you could just fix it.
Let me go check my notes. I think that one of the things that I find a little bit down-putting about the community is some blogs and stuff like to focus on stupid stuff, you call it WordPress drama, where it's like, who cares? Like, this doesn't add any benefit to your average user. It doesn't impact anybody, and you're dragging this out in front of everybody, and you're like, look, everybody, this guy's a jerk, or this guy stole this person's code, and it's like, it's open source. You can't steal code. That's one thing that I think is kind of a downer in the community is when there's all these great blogs and stuff, and they want to ignite the passions against this individual or against these people or against this other CMS, or like we don't need to bother with that. Ain't nobody got time for that. So I think that's the only thing. I'm trying to remember if there's something else that I wrote down. Oh, yeah, it's just trivial. We don't need to weigh in on that. Nobody needs to spend their time on that or energy, and that's just bad vibes in the community that don't need to be fostered.
Well, there's a lot going on in the community within WordPress, the ecosystem, and all of that. What are your thoughts on the future? Where do you think WordPress is headed?
I'm excited about the REST API being integrated. I think that will bring an influx of people who are not familiar with WordPress, but they're not necessarily noobs. A lot of us get our experience with WordPress. So you start with a blog, and then you build up from there, and you're like, oh, I want to tinker with this. And then you have like I'd say that a huge part of our community started tinkering, are beginner tinkerers, and they've just started moving forward, and they've gotten deeper and deeper. But it would be nice once we have the REST API, we might get a bunch of people in the JavaScript community that start to come in from this other direction. That just kind of starts to buoy up the skills and expertise in the WordPress community. Hopefully that they will bring the can-do spirit and all that fun stuff that we have, and that it'll just make us better.
Well, since you bring it up, is there anything particular you want to do with the REST API that sounds like it'll be interesting or that you'll be involved in?
I would love to make a headless site that, with our current a headless site is a site that has a JavaScript front end, and it can be stateless when it can be rendered on the server and then sent to straight HTML. And I would really love to build a site that both uses WordPress and Drupal, because I work with Drupal as well. So being able to have WordPress be your your database repository, and then have your display completely separate from WordPress. So there isn't really a theme. It's just JavaScript requests the data from WordPress and displays it on the page really fast. That sounds great. And being able, there's a lot of power behind Drupal and a lot of power behind WordPress. So I could see us building a really cool site that has both Drupal's REST API and WordPress's REST API, sending data to this front end that renders everything and does amazing stuff.
That'd be pretty cool. I know. I know.
Everybody's got a chance.
Yeah, I look forward to doing projects with it as well. It's just gonna be fun to see where things go. It's just everybody's got ideas, but we'll just have to see how it all plays out. So, how important is the WordPress community to your job and your career?
Um, it's the community itself is really important. It's where I go to find all my answers, and learning. Like everybody's very giving of information and training and wants to help everyone to level up. And there's great people out there that are making amazing plugins, which means that I don't need to go and reinvent the wheel. If they've made a really flexible plugin that is pluggable and modular, I can grab, hey, I can use this little piece. Or something that just does one thing and really well. It makes all the difference for the work that I do, and I'm like, hey, is there any way I can pay you for the work that you've done on this plugin? And a lot of guys are like, no, I'm just happy to know that somebody's using it. And I'm like, wow, man, that's awesome. Awesome. So there's one plugin in particular. It's called Mammoth DocX Converter, and it's a JavaScript or some library, but he created it into a WordPress plugin, and it's for importing Word docs and convert them into really nice HTML. And it's not janky or fugly or any of that stuff. You just bring it in, and it brings all the stuff in, footnotes, images, all that stuff. It just does it really well, and it's really addable. You can add on to it so that you can add classes to things that are part of. I don't know. It's just amazing. Mammoth DocX importer, yeah.
That sounds pretty powerful. I was just wondering the other day with a client project whether is there a good way to do something like that? I'm gonna have to take a peek. Thank you. So, who are some people out there who have inspired you to progress in the world of WordPress?
Let me look at my list. I could talk and talk, but Topher de la Rosia, who's featured on here not too long ago, right?
It's been a while, actually.
Okay. Justin Tadlock is pretty cool. Andrea Rennick, you and Joel are pretty cool. Jared Nova, from who's behind the Timber plugin or Upstatement, looking at how the work that he does and how he supports his plugin is pretty inspiring. And then I mentioned Curtis and a few other people. They're just pretty awesome, and it's fun because when I go to WordPress meetups and WordCamps, I've been able to meet tons and tons of people in the community whose plugins I've used or who created WordPress, or Buddy Press or whatever, like James Jacoby and Matt Mullenweg and all these people. It's just been fun to meet people who are core in creating all these cool things.
Yeah, I know how you feel. Definitely. So there's a lot of people, and tell us about some of the ways that that you get involved in the community and contribute.
I co-lead a WordPress meetup with Kyle, who's right there, and we have about 4 or 5 core people that come consistently every single meetup. We meet twice a month, and the most we've ever had was 15 at one meetup, I think. But there's 106 or something like that people that are part of the group. We're trying to find ways to get everybody to come back and join the group. Speaking at WordCamps is also a pretty fun way to get back to the community. Just networking, but as well as speaking about things in such a way that people feel inspired or empowered to go try something new.
Awesome. you're a real giver.
Whatever.
All right. Are there things about relating to WordPress that you mentioned a couple. You mentioned some things with the WordPress REST API and some things you'd like to do. But are there other things that you always plan to do, like when I get time, or one of these days I want to find a project, or one of these days I want to learn how to do something with WordPress?
I'm I'm looking at getting serious with the HTTP API, which makes it so I can request data from other APIs. And then once I do that, I can either populate posts or post types, or I can save it in a transient cache and do all sorts of fun stuff. So working with the HTTP API sounds like a lot of fun. I've started experimenting with it. Some other things I've done, and I'm looking forward to do more of, is displaying JSON data directly on my website. Which I've done some experiments with it, and it looks pretty cool. It kind of feels like it could speed some things up and make for some content that could be really dynamic.
That would be pretty cool. Let's talk about WordCamps a little bit. First time I ever heard of a WordCamp was from you, and you said you got to go to one of these, and I was like, I don't know, what is it all about? And you just said you got to go. So walk us through your first experience with a WordCamp, what that was like.
I went to Grand Rapids 2012, and it was really well organized. I'd been to a big tech conference for higher ed web dev, and I was like, wow, they're spending heck of a lot of money. And it was just, that was in Milwaukee, and then I went to a WordCamp, and it was a nicer size, and we weren't being herded around and stuff, and I really liked that they'd printed the schedule on the name badge. It's like, so you just fold it out and you see where you're at and you circle the ones you want to go to. Really well organized. And that was one where I got to meet we had contracted Topher to do some projects earlier, so we knew him. I knew him via email and some other ways. And then finally I got to go out there and meet him in person, which was like, woo! And then I met a few other people. Going to WordCamp Chicago was also fun because somehow I ended up in the Foundation days, and I got to be with Foundation 401 or 404 or whatever, I don't remember what it was. So I got to hang out with all these higher level WordPress people, and I was like, wow, now I know how much I don't know. I was all over my head, but I was able to absorb a lot regardless. So that, I mean, and just meeting people like that I admire is always a highlight. I mean, people that I get to just go up to them and thank them. Like Tobias, who manages Table Press. I met him at WordCamp Chicago, and Mika Epstein, and Kurdish Graimala, and just tons of people. Just putting a face to them, and if you follow them on Twitter and you interact with them on forums, and they've solved your problems and stuff, and now you get to actually shake their hand and you're like, thank you. You don't know how many hours you saved me.
Yeah, I remember the same thing. That's very much what like my early WordCamp experiences were as well. It's just finding these people and just saying, wow, thank you. It's such an honor to meet you.
Thanks for giving me a job, giving me the stuff to work on.
Thanks for making me look good. Yeah. Anyway, so what are some WordCamps or other events of any kind, any kind at all, that you plan on attending in the future in 2016? What's on your calendar?
I think WordCamp Grand Rapids possibly, and WordCamp Ann Arbor are probably the most likely candidates. Certainly Ann Arbor. And I'm hoping to be more involved in this year's meetup, WordPress WordCamp. Can't even say it. I don't know if I'll go to Chicago and stuff. With work, I'd rather be given like 3 days to work on something really big and cool, than to go to a conference and absorb all the stuff that I'll never have a chance to do. So there's that part of me is like, oh, if I could talk to my boss about, and my boss would probably be like, okay, here's 3 days of just you time. Make something awesome. I could, unless he's sending me and it's like, we're going to be hiring a developer in the next 2 months, and you need to go to go headhunting, then I might go to Chicago. Well, actually, I'd go to Ann Arbor, and it would probably have to be somewhere near Ann Arbor because that's where our office is. So, I'm going headhunting in Ann Arbor. So yeah, I can't say. There's a few conferences that I'd love to go to. Event Apart would be fun to go to, and they would probably send me, but I don't know. I just want to make sure that the time I spend is most well spent.
One of the things that you've always talked a lot about for as long as I've known.
My cow.
Yeah, your cow. Yeah, that too. But one of the topical things that you've always been interested in discussing and always brought up and always covered very well and educated and inspired me to think more about is user experience. And you've referred to yourself, and I would call you the same thing. You're as an advocate for the end user. And whenever you're working on a project with a client or an employer or something, and they have ideas about how something should work or be implemented, generally your input is relating to how this impacts the user and how it helps serve their goals, what they're trying to accomplish. And I'm interested in having you talk a little bit about what made you so interested in this, and what are some of those moments that you've encountered where you really just became more passionate about fighting for the end user and their experience and thinking about their needs?
I find that when you're doing web development, or I often worked in, can I go grab something real quick? My battery's running low, and I don't want to just,
Sure.
I'll be right back. I'm thinking about this though.
Okay.
Hold that.
All right. Have you taught the little one any new words, Jason?
No, he's not listening. He's not speaking yet.
Oh.
He's got a bit going, though, whether he's going to learn English or Spanish first.
Yeah.
He does love country music.
English or Spanish? That'll be so interesting. God.
Yep.
Fun. I got one of these Fitbits the other day.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Hold that.
Did we talk about that last week?
Huh?
Did we talk about that last week?
Oh, did we?
When you were on your treadmill?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm trying to get on it every day. I'm in these challenges with these other people, and
So you're asking about user experience and stuff and what inspired me and all that stuff. And if there's a specific example that kind of stands out as setting me up for being passionate about this. When I think of web development, oftentimes it's in the context of marketing. And a lot of marketing departments may not think first of their users. They start by saying, what do we want them to do? Rather than like, how can we help these people? It's like, we're trying to make them do something. And that can kind of get pushy. And there's nobody an advocate for making, like, what's good for users is good for business. That's a Jared Spool quote. And if you're gonna, you need to just think about, like, how does this impact the user experience? I hate it when I'm on a page and I'm filling out a form and then there's a link that says, hey, click here if this is you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I click it and then I lose everything that was on my form. And that's bad user experience because that's good. I'm never going to fill out that form because that, like, my expectation would be that somebody wouldn't put something on the page that would take me away from what I'd already done. Fill out like a huge essay or whatever. and then you just lose it just because of a stupid little link. That is the kind of link that needs to open in another tab. Um, there's, and it's the simplest thing to do, but if it's forgotten, then you're hurting your business, and you're not thinking about these users' heartbeats that are being wasted on your stupid technology because you didn't take the time to think through it. This is people's lives. I mean, there's more to life than what happens online. But the fact that people are spending their heartbeats using your website or your technology, and you're going to make it crappy and waste their time, you're not. I mean, I don't know. You have some compassion and thought in how you do your work, so that everybody can be successful. Like, there's companies that have nothing going for them in terms of like slick and lickable interfaces, but the fact that they've helped me, I'm like, well, I'm their dedicated. Like, if I need to buy anything for water heater repair, there's this clunky, awful-looking website, and they're who I will go to because they have like a dozen posts on most common problems and how to solve them yourself. And we happen to sell these things, but you don't have to buy them from us, but we sell them, and you might even get a good price off of us. I mean, and it's like, hey, do you know what? I trust these people. Like, when I buy anodes for my water heater, then they're who I'm buying them from. But not the slick and obnoxious people. They're the people that give value. That comes right down to your user interface. Are you giving value to your customers, or are you putting yourself first? Are you going to ask them for all the information you want first, or are you going to provide them fields with information they're most excited about first? Like for the university, I got to rebuild. They never ended up using it, but I got to rebuild their application form, and I wanted to start out with the questions that the students are going to be most excited. These undergraduate students are going to be most excited to answer. What degree do you want to pursue? Are you going to live on campus? Like, those kind of things. Not what's your name, what's your address, what's your email, and what's your phone number. But the marketing perspective is, oh, if we don't get that information, then there's no way to go after them if they don't complete their form. Yeah, so that's just an example. Like, you want to front load and give them momentum to move forward in the tasks that they want to do.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I've got a question. Well, let's start off with this one. What do you do for fun?
Well, I brew. I brew cider and wine and beer. Right now I'm working on figuring out how to make rice wine, which is really fun. And so that's one of the things that I do. It's been a while, but I also brew bread. I bake bread. I'll probably get back into that in March. I have a small farm, so we have a pretty large garden, and I have currently I have 2 heads of cattle. I have a milk cow that I milk. She's drying off because she's going to calf in April, and I also have a heifer calf. But we did butcher a bull, and we did butcher 4 pigs this year from our that we raised. So that's kind of, it's fun to be sufficient in that way. All the meat in our big freezers are from our animals. So it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun work. You know, like being Amish.
Well, you mentioned in here you make cheese. Is that one of your things?
Yeah, we make cheese. My brother and I make cheese. I do most of the milking, and then I go hang out with him while he does some of the cheese making processes. We make Gouda, and we make a farm cheese that's a lot more like a provolone, or one of those lighter, less flavorful cheeses. I've had a few experiments that were delicious, but they didn't turn out what they were supposed to be. They're more like gorgonzola or stinky cheese. I also have these cheeses that are about this big, that are rolled in black peppercorns, and they're good fresh or dried, and it's more like Parmesan, and you grate it onto things. But it's just fun.
You blog about making cheese. I've always wanted to make my own cheese, and I've never had the nerve to give it a wild shot.
I bet you can get raw milk there, right?
Oh, I'm
Columbia.
sure I could. Yeah.
And you can make cheese. You could go to the New England cheese making website.
Yeah. Okay. I'll check that out after this.
Yeah, it's fun. And the mozzarella is one of the easiest cheeses you can make.
Oh, nice. Keep that in mind.
Huh.
And you could probably even get buffalo milk in Columbia.
I don't think I'm going to get fresh buffalo milk here.
Okay. Cool. I could talk about my hobbies all day long. So what else you guys got?
Let's talk about brewing beer. That's one of my favorite subjects. How long have you been brewing?
Well, right now I have a Weissen that is in a big bucket. I'm trying to decide what amendment I add to it. I like to add things to make them sour without having to be patient and wait for things to get sour by themselves, because I'm not going to wait around for 6 months. So I have some staghorn sumac that I harvested from the yard, and people sometimes will soak that and make like a pink lemonade that's really tart and astringent. So I think I'm going to add that to my Weissen. I also make a hibiscus Weissen, and I made a habanero Kolsch that Kyle's had. And what else have I got? And lots of hard cider. I've made at least 26 gallons of hard cider this year. Bless you. So yeah, lots of hard cider. Right now I have a hard cider that's soaking on a bourbon barrel stave, and another one I have a hop cider that has a citra hops in it, so it's really citrusy and it's like passion fruit flavored. It's lovely.
Can you tell us about your biggest brewing disaster?
Oh yes. Once I got this silly idea to I was growing these sugar beets or mangoldwurzels to feed my cows, and I had a whole bunch like when they didn't need them anymore, and I was like, huh. And I found this website that was like, yeah, sugar beet beer. And I'm like, hey, he says that his significant other says it approves. I mean, that. Well, what could you ask for? So I juiced all these sugar beets and I squeezed them, and it was a heck of a lot of work. And then I made this beer, and I threw the yeast in, and it didn't seem to do anything. And then I bottled it, and it tasted like dirt, sweet dirt. So I had these bottles, and every once in a while I would bring one out for when we had guests, and like, hey, you should try this. Hey. And I ended up popping them open. Like I'd throw them into the pig food every now and then. I'd pop open a bottle. Ooh, look, here you go, liquid dirt. For the pigs, and they loved it. So I'd say that was a disaster. I mean, I didn't have any explosions or anything, but I spent like half of a day making this stuff, and hoping that it would turn out. And I like trying a bunch of different things and seeing what happens. Right now, I'm making like the rice wine, but I'm also trying to make oat wine, and I took malted barley, and I have that with the same process, and it's bubbling away. So I have a process that doesn't involve any boiling whatsoever, and I'm basically creating a beer that doesn't involve any boiling, and it's just, I don't know, it's crazy, but it's interesting to see what happens next.
You're always one for experimentation. I've always appreciated that. I was just trying new things. I never know what you're going to brew up next or what you're going to try.
The habanero Kolsch is probably one of my favorites.
Hey, I got to say I liked it. It burns in the back of the throat a little bit, but it tastes good, real good.
So, cool.
Just another part of my life that I say, I probably wouldn't be doing that either if it weren't for Mr. Peter Shackelford brewing beer. Yeah.
I don't know what your wife thinks about this, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's not as excited about the idea of getting a cow in the backyard quite yet, but we will see where that goes. Um, anyway, so if here's a question: if all of your ambitions and optimistic predictions come true, and you're writing your autobiography 20 years from now, what might you title it, and what would it be about?
Um, I think, what did I write down on my notes? Um, Probably something, let's see, I'm trying to remember what I said. It was really pithy. Something, I think, is how somebody got out of tech and started a farm or something. I don't know. Or how to do a minimum of, like, how to help people on their web and live off of your farm. I don't know, something like that, because that sounds pretty ideal, is to make enough to pay for property taxes and some extra, and then sell produce and meat to make the rest of your ends meet. So then you can still be passionate. Like, there's no chance of burning out on web, and there's still some time in the winter to refresh and learn and be at your top of your game. But it doesn't have to consume every minute of your day. So that there's more time with family. I mean, the biggest thing I want is for me to have a job that my 6-year-old daughter understands what I'm doing. Now, going and pulling carrots, my daughter understands that. Taking care of animals, making sure that they only have one bad day, my daughter understands that. But me leaving and being gone all day, doing something on the internet, and then coming home and still possibly doing something on the internet, I don't know. I, I don't. I want her to. I'd rather have something that is tactile and that my 6-year-old can relate with, that I can model for her. And I can't model how to build a modularized website for her at this point. And who knows if she'll even care. But I'd rather have my daughter raised with a farm sensibility about life than to have her brain eaten by the internet.
Yes, it does seem to have
So yeah.
Insatiated hunger for brains of the youth. I don't know where that's coming from. Anyway, so do you have have recommendations for other great guests that we should definitely get our act together and invite on the show?
I reach out to Jared Nova. He's upstatement. He's a primary guy at upstatement. He also is the primary maintainer of the Twitter library plugin, Timber library plugin for Twitter, and Twig. And he's really approachable and helpful, and I'd love to hear more from him. Either that or Tobias. He's in Germany, so I don't know as far as time zones and stuff goes, and if he'd be interested. But Tobias behind Table Press is also. I've enjoyed talking to him. He's really interested in baseball, which is fun. Not that I'm super interested in baseball, but it's just fun that he's really passionate about baseball and WordPress, and he's in Germany, so he's a cool guy. So either Jared or Tobias.
So we're getting down to about out of time here, and it's been a pretty exciting and interesting hour. Are there any questions maybe that we didn't get around to asking you that maybe worth discussing, or anything that you are interested in kind of promoting or just sharing with everyone?
Well, playing with Twig is fun. I did a WordPress meetup, WordCamp talk about Twig at WordCamp Ann Arbor, which is, I think it's just an interesting thing, and if at some point WordPress decides to use a templating language, chances are good it would be Twig, so having a handle on it beforehand could be useful. A number of people mentioned it in the wish list for WordPress Core 4.4 or 4.5. Yeah, and the DocX plugin, the Mammoth DocX plugin, is worth looking at and playing with, because you may find that you have a client that that's just what they need. So we have a project where we had these ginormous, like 50-page Word documents that were these academic reports that needed to be ingested into the website, and we didn't want them to be PDFs. We don't mind if they're PDFs, but we wanted them to be HTML. And this was a great, painless way to convert everything over and still maintain all the content just like it is. So it's a great thing to check out. If you never know when your client might need something just that cool.
Sounds pretty cool to me. Well, that's pretty much all the questions that we have. Thanks for sharing those things, Peter. Jason, anything else?
No, I just want to say thanks for Peter. Thanks Peter for joining us, especially at short notice. I think this was. So.
It was a little bit. I'm really grateful to you, Peter, for taking the time to join us. There's a lot of interesting stuff that you shared. I recommend that people follow you on Twitter at PixelPlow and follow your blog, pixelplow.com, and just reach out and get to know Peter and encourage him to come to some more WordCamps. And he's a special guy. And if you're in the local area here in Michigan, come to our meetup, and we'd love to.
Yeah. Okay. See you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, man.